Welcome back. One of rock's greatest songwriters and musicians, Robbie Robertson, has died at the age of 80. As the guitarist and lead writer for the band, Robertson sourced American music and history to write a number of classics like The Wait and The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. Robbie Robertson, the band's lead guitarist and songwriter who helped reshape contemporary rock, died Wednesday after a long illness. He was 80. The night they drove old Dixie down, when all the bells were ringing. Robertson was born in Canada on Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve before moving to Toronto. He worked and performed with Bob Dylan and Ronnie Hawkins before the band was officially formed in 1967. As part of the band, Robertson profoundly influenced popular music in the 1960s and 70s as they fashioned a new sound immersed in the American past. They remained defined by their first two albums, Music from Big Pink and The Band, both released in the late 1960s. In 1976, Robertson decided he needed a break from the road and organized rock's ultimate send-off, an all-star gathering at San Francisco's Winterland Ballroom. The concert was filmed by Martin Scorsese and was the basis for his celebrated 1978 documentary, The Last Waltz. Robertson had intended the band to continue recording together, but The Last Waltz helped permanently sever his friendship with band member Levon Helm. The band regrouping without Robertson in the early 1980s, him going on to a long career as a solo artist and soundtrack composer. He remained close to Scorsese and helped oversee the soundtracks for films like The Departed, The Irishman, and the upcoming Killers of the Flower Moon, among others. In a statement following his passing, Scorsese wrote in part, "Robbie Robertson was one of my closest friends, a constant in my life and my work. I could always go to him as a confidant. It goes without saying that he was a giant, that his effect on the art form was profound and lasting. There's never enough time with anyone you love, and I loved Robbie." Joining us now is the host of the ongoing history of new music, Alan Cross. Alan, obviously this is a huge loss for the music industry. How was Robbie Robertson instrumental in shaping both rock and popular music in the 60s and 70s?
There are few people to come out of this country that have been more influential than Robbie and the band. They basically put together a brand new sound in the late 60s when everybody was off doing pop or psychedelia or something else. And by studying blues, rhythm and blues, gospel, country, hillbilly, all that sort of stuff along the way, they cobbled together this new sound that no one had ever really heard before. But today we would call Americana, this rootsy, authentic, rural feeling kind of music with a storytelling feel. And it's rather interesting that Americana seems to have been invented by a band that was 80% Canadian.
You touched on it a little bit there, but how did Robertson's songwriting and his study of music differ from others at the time?
Robbie came out of the Six Nations Reserve, and he was there growing up with his mom. His father died before he was born. And everybody else in the reserve was always making music. And he became very, very interested in what they were doing and what they were feeling as they were making this music. So they taught him how to play a guitar sometime beginning around the age of 10. Plus, he was always listening to American radio blasting in across the border, American rock and roll radio. And that became a big part of his influence. So we have, an indigenous background. We have a Canadian background. We have what was originally a country music background. We have an old rock and roll background. And then he gets in with Ronnie Hawkins, who comes from Arkansas and brings an entirely different sensibility to Robbie's musical environment. And together with the other four guys in the band, Ronnie drilled these dudes into becoming a really, really, really super tight live performance act. And then when they were left on their own with after Bob Dylan had his motorcycle accident, they were just able to woodshed music, picking up on all the influences that all five guys had, and we came up with they came up with the sound of the band.
Robbie also had a long relationship with Martin Scorsese, scoring a number of his movies. How did that portion of his career play into his love of storytelling?
Martin Scorsese has always been a big music fan. If you look at his filmography, you'll see that he's been involved in a lot of musical projects. In the early 1970s, the band was running out of steam. There were addiction problems, alcohol problems. There were fighting in amongst the members of the band. And Robbie, as the de facto leader and musical director, said, "Okay, that's it. We're packing it in. We've had a good run, and now we are done." So he was the one that said that we are going to break up with a great film event in San Francisco, and this director, Martin Scorsese, who just come off movies like Taxi Driver, is going to be the director. And that was the first. And from there on in, Scorsese and Robbie kept a very tight relationship. Movies like Raging Bull and Casino and The Gangs of New York and Wolf of Wall Street. And there's a movie that isn't out yet called Flowers of the Killer Moon, this 3-hour Scorsese movie that will be released very soon. That ended up being Robbie Robertson's last musical project.
Thanks so much for joining us, Alan.
You're welcome.